Okay, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us today. Our session topic today is protecting your SaaS data with Veeam Data Cloud. My name is Michael Paul. I'm a Veeam Data Cloud solution engineer. I focus on Microsoft 365 and Entra ID. I'm joined today by my colleague Peter Bosch, Veeam Data Cloud engineer for Salesforce, and we are supported today by our lovely colleagues Gregory and Chetan in the Q&A as well, so please ask any questions as they come up. So let's get straight into this, shall we? Our agenda for today, we're going to be talking about Veeam Data Cloud, the new Veeam Data Cloud experience. We're going to focus on Veeam Data Cloud for Entra ID, Veeam Data Cloud for Salesforce, and we're going to have some demos as well. So, introducing Veeam Data Cloud. What is Veeam Data Cloud? Well, Veeam Data Cloud is a unified cloud experience. It's designed with modern SaaS-focused technologies, secure by design security principles, AI acceleration to offer multiple SaaS and PaaS and IaaS workloads protected via a simple interface. But let's have a look at what we really mean by this. So here is the Veeam Data Cloud overview. Okay, if you've ever been working with Veeam, you'll know that Veeam has focused on data resilience for a long time, and that's built up of 5 pillars that we like to talk about: data backup, data recovery, data security, data intelligence, and data portability. But what do these mean? Data backup is arguably the most explanatory, self-explanatory even. We're protecting your data. Okay, comprehensive, rich backups to know that you can recover the data exactly how you need to, which brings us into data recovery. Now, if we think about data security, what does this mean? We want to make sure that that data is available when you need it. Only you and the people authorized can access that data. Data intelligence is providing more insights, more usability out of that data, allowing you to spot trends in your environment to deal with maybe threats, maybe just helping you with the best way to recover. And our data portability is designed to help you prevent vendor lock-in. Your data, you own it. We want to make sure you can take it with you wherever you go. And these 5 pillars, we pulled that into a unified, rich user experience and interface across our multiple workloads. Now, as of today, Veeam Data Cloud is protecting Microsoft 365, protecting Entra ID, Microsoft Azure, Salesforce, and we even have a backup storage as a service offering that we call Veeam Data Cloud Vault. So let's talk a bit more about data. And I want to start off by talking about the shared responsibility model. Okay, so you might be familiar with the traditional on-prem approach to data, and I'm not even talking backups here. I'm talking your applications, your production data, effectively. There's a general consensus that if you've got your data within your own on-prem environments, well, you're responsible for everything. We're talking the traditional, the physical infrastructure, virtual operating system, the networking, the applications themselves, how you access it, and then your data. And then this is where things start to get a bit more gray. We start to look at IaaS, infrastructure as a service, where, okay, that physical infrastructure layer has been taken away, but we're still responsible for everything else. And sometimes people misunderstand that and think that data protection is rolled in, but oftentimes it's not. And then it gets even more blurry when we think about PaaS. And suddenly the virtual infrastructure, the operating system, they've been stripped away as well. We only really need to worry about the network controls, the applications on there, the identity and the data. And then we end up in the world of SaaS. This is where the applications are being offered to you. The underlying network that gets that to you is normally predefined. The core application is still part and parcel of that service provider's offering, as well as all the infrastructure that we're not worrying about anymore. But the identity and the data have always remained your responsibility. It's true of Microsoft 365, of Salesforce, of many different SaaS workloads out there. Okay, so now let's talk about Veeam Data Cloud for Entra ID specifically. Okay, so with Veeam Data Cloud for Entra ID, what is Veeam bringing to the market here? Well, we've got 3 core pillars that I want to talk about: our proactive protection, the effortless recovery, and our everything is included model that we are using across the Veeam Data Cloud portfolio. So let's dive into proactive protection first and foremost. Now, we're talking about protection of not just what people think of when we talk about Entra. Normally, you say Entra, you think about users, you think about groups, you might think about Microsoft 365. But Entra is so much more than that. First of all, Entra ID has a single sign-on mechanism, which means that a lot of your commonly consumed SaaS applications might already be using signing in with Microsoft or signing in with Entra to enable the access to that. So before you know it, Entra is already providing a lot more than just the users groups for, say, Microsoft 365. Okay, and as a part and parcel of that, we need to keep that data secure, of course. But let's think about the auditing side. If I'm using single sign-on to access all these different workloads, then that means that all of my identity has been pulled into Entra. And whenever someone is accessing a resource, Entra becomes my single source of truth for this. If we think about cybersecurity for a moment here, if I've got everything going into one location, I need to know that I can track who has been doing what. Now, by default, Microsoft will retain these logs for 30 days, potentially 90 days if you're licensed appropriately, but that's it. And casting that net wider, thinking about cybersecurity, if you have some form of compromise in your environment, potentially an external threat actor has gained access, you start going through the process of pulling in professionals to make sure that your environment is once more secure for your organization to use. Now, the challenge with that is there's two different schools of thought with ransomware actors, and some are going in and immediately attacking the environment, doing as much damage as they can and hoping you pay up. But there's a second type, and that second type, they're not worried about get in, deploy immediately. They're looking to gain a persistent leverage. Now, if you've seen any of Veeam's data trends reports or the data protection trends, then what you will notice is that a conversation has shifted around ransomware attacks and cybersecurity incidents over the recent years. We're no longer just talking if you get attacked. It's when you get attacked. And it's also frequently become how many times do you get attacked? I recall one from a couple of years ago where many organizations reported at least one attack, and increasingly it was two or more. And this is where this second school of threat actor really comes into play. They're breaking into the environment. They're putting down roots of persistence back into that environment. They are trying to move laterally through the environment, understand as much as they can about your organization, about your business processes. So when they strike, you have no choice but to pay. Now, if your audit logs are only retained for 30 or 90 days, well, then that becomes a really big problem from your compliance perspective, because how can you be sure when that threat actor got in, what they did, so that you can revert back? And that's why when we protect Entra, we're talking comprehensively here. We are talking the sign-in logs and not just what we think of users and groups. And we'll touch on that more shortly. Now, I've already kind of mentioned this forensic investigation, this cybersecurity recovery effort, but because we're backing up data on a daily basis, it allows you to go through as a point in time to look at exactly what has taken place. And again, we'll go more granular on what that looks like in a moment. But I just want to stop for a moment and reflect that that already sounds like a lot of configuration, a lot of complexity. But Veeam Data Cloud is a backup as a service offering here to protect your SaaS workloads. It wouldn't do to be complex. We want to be a low friction, low touch, easy to adopt solution. And I'm proud to say that our onboarding only takes minutes, and we start backing up your data immediately and then protect it every day. So you don't need to worry about data gaps. We are protecting everything that we can for you. So let's now move on to recovery, because backup is always the easy part. Recovery is where you prove your solution. So first of all, let's talk about geo-residency. Now, we are having the EMEA session today, so let's get EMEA specific. There's multiple different countries that make up EMEA, and each of those will have different data residency requirements. They might have different places where data is definitely not allowed to reside. And when you onboard, you can choose where you want that data to reside. So you know that your Entra ID data is stored exactly where you've chosen it. And don't worry if the region that you want isn't available at present. We're adding new regions all the time. If you speak to your Veeam sales rep, they'll tell you exactly what that looks like as to whether or not we're planning to launch that region, and we can add your name to it. Now, when we're thinking about restorations, so far we've talked about cyber recoveries. We talked about these large-scale events where potentially we've got to undo a lot of damage at once. But the reality is that mistakes happen on a daily basis across organizations around the globe. And we don't often need to restore all of the data from an entire tenant point of view to recover from some minor misdemeanor. Okay, if someone has accidentally run a PowerShell script with the wrong scope and changed attributes for a few more users than they meant to, well, we can recover individual attributes. We can recover group memberships, and we can go all the way up to those users that we've thought about for this disaster recovery scenario. So that granular scoping is what Veeam Data Cloud allows you to do in terms of a recovery. And we do that by allowing you to quickly identify those inconsistencies. You can choose a restore point in time and compare that to the production to know exactly what has changed, so you can make the most informed decision about recovery. Now, something we've already kind of alluded to, but our everything is included model. So if you've got Veeam Data Cloud for Microsoft 365, you might already be familiar with this, but our license model is simple. You consume on a per user per month basis, and all of the compute, the storage, the networking, the patching, the maintenance of that platform, it's all baked into the product from the get-go. So you're just paying that consistent license. And it's the same with Entra ID. Just license your users, and we're only licensing enabled member type users. Don't worry about guests, don't worry about disabled accounts. And that's it. We'll handle the rest. No more patching, upgrading. You don't need to worry about securing that core infrastructure. Leave that to the experts. We make the software, we'll protect it for you. Now we're going to go deep for a moment, and let's talk about the data that we are protecting here. Today we're protecting users, we're protecting groups, administrative units, roles, applications and service principals, in addition to those sign-in logs that I already mentioned. And we've already got more data that we're going to be protecting as the year continues on. And it's not just the core metadata, it is things such as the group memberships, it's the active Entra ID role assignments, it's user memberships from, say, an admin unit perspective. Okay, Entra ID is very much a relationship-driven approach to identity. So we protect those relationships so you can restore consistently. If you restore a user, let's restore it into all of the groups it needed access to before, as an example. So one thing I want to call out now is, in case you're not aware, Entra ID has a recycle bin. And that's something that a lot of organizations expect to use. And that's fantastic, okay? The purpose of this slide is not to tell you that the recycle bin is no good. The purpose of this slide is to tell you that the recycle bin has got limitations. And let's just make sure you're aware of them. Okay, so a lot of what we've discussed is retained within a recycle bin. So users, groups, app registrations, logs, there is a recycle bin when that is deleted, okay? You can see for most of them that's about 30 days, and we already touched on logs separately for its retention. And there is a grace period after that is deleted before it's permanently deleted, and that's fantastic. But the first thing I want to call out is not everything goes to the recycle bin. Things such as conditional access policies, role assignments, they don't go to the recycle bin. When you delete it, it's gone. More granular than that, if we talk about users, if I delete a user, great, it's in the recycle bin. If I change an attribute, the old data is immediately lost. Okay, that ability to see what attributes look like before an event doesn't exist natively within the Entra ID recycle bin. So when we think about an example I gave earlier, maybe I run a PowerShell script and I've updated attributes. Entra ID can have dynamic memberships for groups where you look at attributes and include or exclude users based on those attributes. If I accidentally run a PowerShell script and update all the attributes for my users, I could break all of my group memberships globally with that one commandment. Okay. And without a solution such as Veeam Data Cloud, you don't have the visibility to see what those attributes were before to recover it back. And the final thing to call out is the recycle bin is not immutable. Whilst the recycle bin exists, you can manually empty that. So therefore, if there was a cyber attack, they could go after your recycle bin. And if it's not within any of that grace period, you could find yourself at a complete loss and have to recover from a solution such as Veeam Data Cloud. So that's enough slides for now. What I'm going to do is now we're going to change gears and we're going to start to look at the Veeam Data Cloud platform. So bear with me just 1 minute while I start sharing my screen. And what I will just say as well is please keep any questions coming as they come up. Again, Greg and Cheaton are on hand to help answer those. So let me just share my screen here and hopefully you can all see that now. So this is the Veeam Data Cloud for Entra ID platform. Actually, it's not. It's the overall Veeam Data Cloud screen. It doesn't matter what solution or solutions you've got, you're taken to the same entry point here. So let's just refresh. Let's make sure that I've not been signed out because I've kept this tab open for a little while. It's certainly possible. Now here we are. So I'm on my overview screen. And we can see here I've got Entra and I've got Salesforce. Now it's worth mentioning that Microsoft 365, Azure and Vault, they're coming over to this new user experience imminently. Okay, but for now, we're just going to talk about Entra. That's the purpose of my session today. I'm going to go in and manage. And one of the first things that you'll notice is that I can see my subscription up top. I can see the number of users I'm licensed to protect and the number of licenses I've consumed when my license expires, and I can see when any upcoming maintenance is. So if I click on that, here's the next maintenance window. Okay. Now, why do I need this subscription information up here? Well, we can protect multiple Entra ID tenants within a single Veeam Data Cloud subscription. Potentially you're administrating multiple sub-companies that all have their individual Entra IDs. Maybe you just have one master tenant, but you also have a separate test or dev environment that you need to protect. So we absolutely support having multiple tenants within Entra, and you can see your consumed license as an overview here. Okay, this allows you to fluidly reassign your licenses between the different tenants. Now, if I wanted to add an Entra ID tenant, it's a really easy process. I authorize myself into the Entra ID, and we just have to approve the different app registration permissions that we're going to require. I would then choose my region, I would choose my retention, and away we go. Now, I've already done this, so we can see here my display name, Michael Paul Dev. You have to pardon the pun on my name. And then my domain name is michaelpauldev.microsoft.com. We can see I'm provisioned. We can see I'm protecting 161 objects, and my region is set to UK South. And we can see the recent activity was when my last backup ran. So let's go in and manage this. The first thing I want to call out while we're talking about tenant configurations is if I go into settings here, we can see my tenant overview. We can see its name, we can see the region, you can see my retention period here. You can define your retention based on months or years, and we support retaining that up to 99 years. That's more than enough history for most organizations, especially when we consider that Entra ID is barely 20 years old. You can also see I'm backing up every day. Now let's go back to the dashboard. Okay, so we've dived into this tenant and you can see here, so I have shrunk the screen down after sharing this just to obviously make it a bit easier for everyone to view, but I'll just zoom this out a little bit here. Okay, so there we go. So we can see here the protection status. So I'm protecting my tenant. I can see when my last backup took place, and I can see when my oldest backup was. And again, I've got daily points in between these. I can see an overview of all the objects I'm protecting. Now, just to highlight again, we're protecting the enabled member accounts from a license perspective, but we're protecting so much more anyway, okay? Which is why the number of objects protected is most likely not going to match what you see from that license consumed standpoint. But we'll dive into that in a moment. I just want to highlight here that we can also see the recent restore sessions that have taken place. Now, I'm going to go into objects here. So we'll start with users and we'll talk about some of the high-level functionality that we've got. So you can see I've got many different users here, okay? And if I select someone such as Adele, you'll see I have these options to compare and restore. I just want to show you what it looks like in a bulk restore scenario. So I'm going to choose all these users and I'm going to choose restore. Okay, now for each of these, by default, we go into the most recent point in time, but I absolutely can override this. I can select all the users and I can go back to a different point in time, and then it's going to go through, it's going to validate this, and it's going to align for each of these when the last backup took place for them. This is very useful because it won't always be consistent when you think about members of staff joining and leaving. That absolutely can have an impact on those points. Okay, and once that is done, again, my session might have timed out here, so I might just have to refresh it. But once that's done, you'll then see the options that we've got around the restoration. So I mentioned the recycle bin earlier, and as I said, it's not to say the recycle bin isn't any good. The recycle bin is actually fantastic. What we can do, so I'm just going to refresh this in case I have, in fact, been timed out. The recycle bin is actually one of the things that we go to for restorations because there's so many different relationships that take place between this different data. So again, I'll just choose my users here. Okay, we'll go next. You'll see here that when I restore, if an object already exists, I can skip it. I can overwrite all of the data within that object. But focus on that recycle bin for a moment. I can restore from the Entra ID recycle bin. This is really useful because I mentioned Entra ID is a relationship system, okay? There's users tied to groups, tied to app registrations. Now we're focused on users for a moment, but just to flip the script for a minute and let's think about app registrations, okay? We've got different certificates for them. We might have different keys. The point to know is that whenever you've got a password or a certificate, you want it to be secure, which means that by design, Microsoft aren't going to allow anyone to access certain sensitive data via the API. The only way to access that is with the recycle bin, which is why by default we want to use that recycle bin and insert data where we can. Okay, and you see here, as I mentioned, relationships, we absolutely want to keep all of those in track. In terms of setting a password, I could set a default password for all the users. Okay, that's great if we're restoring only a few, but if I'm restoring hundreds or thousands, do I really want all of my users having the same password? No. I can set a unique temporary password for everyone. And if I choose set password, what you'll then see here is we generate a unique password for everyone. I can regenerate that to completely different ones, not a problem. I can go through and I can edit the individual users and set specific passwords. Now, once that's done, I can export that and download the CSV of all of those passwords so I can distribute that out securely. I'll choose to apply that, and you'll see we're warning you, ensure that you save these passwords because you cannot access that data later. And we can also enforce that password reset must be done on next sign-in, okay? So users won't continue to keep these default passwords for a long period of time. And then once that's done, it will just validate the criteria that I've set, and then that will be it. We can kick off the restore. Now, we don't need to worry about that in this scenario, so let's just cancel out here. The next thing I want to show you is for Adele. So we've also got the ability to do a compare and restore. Okay, so you'll see here I've chosen Adele, and what this is going to do now is it's going to look at the latest backup and what production looks like. So Adele is going to be my little victim for today. So I've given Adele a promotion. She used to be a retail manager and now she's going to be the CEO. So what you'll see in a few moments is all the attributes as they get populated. So what's happening here is we're just waiting for Entra ID to tell us all the attributes, and then we're going to do a comparison. Okay, so it'll take a few moments. We'll leave it to it. We're just going to explore the other tab. Oh, there we go. It's finished. So we'll carry on. So you can see here, as I mentioned, she's now CEO. We changed her department to senior leadership, and then I got carried away and I decided to change her phone number to the back phone. Now, I don't want to get in trouble, so I really should set that back. And again, this isn't something I can do with the recycle bin. So I can choose these individual attributes and then I can restore just those attributes back without impacting the rest of the user. Now, by default, I see the latest restore point, but I can go through any of the historical points in time and do a comparison against that. I also don't need to compare against live. If I want to see day by day exactly what changes have been made, I can change what I'm comparing to. Do I want to compare to now? Do I want to compare to a previous point in time? Now for this, I'm just going to reset the phone number, and you'll see here I have a restore reason. So it was definitely an accident and not on purpose. I accidentally changed the phone number. Maybe I want to give a ticket ref here. And now I choose restore. And that's it. That's kicked off. Okay. So that is underway, and what we'll do while we're waiting for that to finish is we're just going to carry on within the tenant. So let's go have a look at the rest of the objects here. So as I mentioned, we've got groups. We can filter by the various different group types, and you'll see again we've got the compare, the restore functions available. Same for administrative units, though I don't have any within my demo tenant. You can then see the various roles, and whether they're built-in roles, custom roles. And then for applications, you'll see the app registrations and those service principals as well. I'm just going to choose application, and you can see here I've got my app registrations for Veeam Data Cloud for Microsoft 365. And again, I can compare, I can restore. Next thing I'm going to do is let's have a look at the Entra ID logs. So this will just take a moment to display. And as I mentioned, so audit logs. We can protect this across any tenant, and by default, Microsoft are only retaining this for 30 days. If we go to sign-in logs, you'll see that it's only if your Entra tenant itself has a P1 or P2 license attached to it, then we can access these sign-in logs. But again, we're protecting that, and typically that's going to take you up to about 90 days of retention. The first thing that we need to acknowledge here is there's no restore button, and that is deliberate. A log should only be read-only, because if we can inject data into a log, then we invalidate its impartiality, its reliability. If we can insert fake data, we can't trust the log to be accurate. So instead what we can do is we can export. Now if I just click export here without choosing anything, I'm just going to export the entire month's worth of logs here. I can choose individual logs, and then I can export them as well. So I've got those various different options. So again, going back to the scenario of a persistent threat that's been in my environment for a while, I could just go through month by month and export all of that log information for my third-party cybersecurity team and make sure that my tenant is safe. Okay. Now, next thing I want to do is I'm just going to jump into activity, and we can see all of the different backup jobs, the tenant backup, the audit log backup. I can view the details, and then I can see exactly what's happened within that job. And then if I go to restore sessions, now I want to take a step back here and talk about restore, because when we think about Entra and Veeam Data Cloud, we think about security in a lot of ways. We use Entra ID single sign-on ourselves for Veeam Data Cloud, and we do that because that way we inherit your security framework. If you've got conditional access policies applied, if you're using privileged identity management, we can inherit that security framework. We also support Veeam authentication in case your Entra ID tenant was compromised, and we still have MFA. Now, that is something that a lot of organizations are used to thinking about from a security standpoint, preventing access. But what happens when you need to grant access? So most organizations have in-house IT teams, even if they're third party with an MSP, they still need to grant permissions to perform actions, and that can create an insider threat. Now, the best way to counteract an insider threat from my perspective is with auditing. Okay, so by tracking all of the restore sessions, you can see here view details. We can see who has done what against what users, against what data, and we can see any justifications, and we can see exactly what was performed. This audit log is immutable. There's no way of opting out of being collected into that audit log. So you know that you have a transactionally consistent way of seeing what has been done with your backup data. Now, talk about access and insider threats. Let's talk about RBAC, or role-based access control. This is something that is built into Veeam Data Cloud. Okay, so you can see here I've got myself, I've got a couple of my colleagues. So Joe and myself, we're both organization admins. And my colleague Fabian is an organization viewer. Well, what does this mean? As an organization admin, I can do pretty much anything within my tenant from that top level perspective. As an organization viewer, he can see the top level of the tenant, but he can't just do anything. But I have given him Entra ID administrator rights. Now, if I drill into this, you can see it's currently across all my Entra ID tenants. However, I could specify it to only be for specific Entra ID subtenants. Okay, so we can get really granular on that control. I could grant additional roles to him. Our RBAC model is designed to be implicitly denied by default and explicitly approved, which means that you can blend all of these roles together and get a cumulative framework of permissions. So you can see here, I won't touch on Salesforce, we're going to look at that soon, but you can see there's some roles for that. For M365, there's Entra, and there's the organization. And the final thing that I just want to call out, if we go back into Entra, is our Veeam Assistant. Okay, we've got Veeam Intelligence baked into Veeam Data Cloud. Now, these are LLMs that are trained on Veeam documentation, guides, best practices to allow you to effectively use these tools. Now, we release updates frequently on these solutions. However, because we want to be a low touch, low friction of adoption solution, we understand that you're not going to spend necessarily all day, every day in this platform. So there might be updates, new features that you're not aware of. So we can give real-time recommendations and insights, but we can also help you when you're not sure what to do. And we've got some example prompts. You can see here, how to see details of a resource session. I just showed you that, but if I ask this question, what you'll then see is our AI tell you exactly how to carry out this task. And because you can type in free text, you can ask it whatever you want. So you can ask it, have I got any threats that I need to be aware of within my organization, anything of concern? And we can use Veeam Intelligence to help steer you towards those recommendations and insights. And this will continue to grow as the product grows. So you can see here, I've been given all the details as to how to perform a resource session. Let's see if it's right. We accessed the Entra ID page. We did that. We went over to activity. We viewed the restore sessions and the session details. I showed you how to do that. It's accurate with it because, again, it's trained on our documentation. And with that, that brings us to the end of Entra ID. So now I'm going to invite back on my colleague, Peter Bosch, and we're going to start to have a look at Salesforce. Okay, so stop sharing there. Floor's all yours, Peter.
Super stuff, Michael. Great job. Thank you so much. Let me share my screen because we're going to get right into this. Let's see. There we go. There we go. Michael, if you're still around, you might let me know if you can see the screen okay.
Yes, I can see that perfectly.
Cool. Okay. When I make a transition to demo, I'll probably get your help too, just to make sure. We'll try some changes to make sure that's all working. But in the meantime, listen, thank you so much. And just to introduce myself, I'm glad to be here today to talk to you about Veeam Data Cloud for Salesforce. I have my esteemed colleague, Chetan Jan, who is going to handle any questions. I think it's been really quiet. So either A, this is all making sense to everybody who's listening in, or B, you don't have any questions as of yet. But hopefully, as we get through this, you will have some questions for us. Between myself and Chetan, we have probably over 25 years of Salesforce experience. So if you've got a question on this, and of course our Veeam Data Cloud experience, we can sort that out for you. Okay, let's move into this. So the high stakes of Salesforce data loss, whether due to human error, cyber attacks, or system failure, carries significant risks. And Gartner has estimated that the average cost of IT downtime to be around $5,600 per minute. And more recent estimates have climbed even higher. IBM reports that the average cost of a data breach in 2024 has reached over $4.8 million. So data loss in Salesforce can stem from various causes, including accidental deletion, system errors, human error, and malicious activities. So implementing a robust Salesforce backup and recovery strategy is crucial for mitigating these risks and ensuring business continuity. And that's why we have this Salesforce shared responsibility model, which outlines the security and compliance obligation between Salesforce and its customers. Salesforce is responsible for securing infrastructure, platform maintenance, and updates, while customers are responsible for securing their data, compliance, and configuration within the platform. The shared responsibility model helps our customers understand their roles in maintaining a secure Salesforce environment. And certainly in my experience of Salesforce, I can honestly say that many Salesforce customers have never seen this model or don't fully understand it. So the fact that you're on the call with us today and we're able to discuss with you exactly what this model is and where the sharing begins and ends, I think is crucial. Now, next up, Veeam Data Cloud for Salesforce protects your Salesforce data, metadata, and files, and it allows for granular restore of specific data points and offers features like customizable backup schedules, data archiving, and the ability to compare versions of backed up data with live data. So some of the key areas of protection include reading from left to right objects. So we cover standard objects, custom objects, manage packages, content documents, files, and attachments, metadata, which has standard metadata, customization, automatizations, sandbox seeding from production to sandbox, and also from sandbox to sandbox, and finally data archival, which is policy-based data archival and data retrieval. And what underpins all this, of course, is encryption, no recycle bin, data masking, and anonymization. And coming soon, we're going to have archive data visualization and template-based seeding, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. The Veeam Data Cloud for Salesforce offers robust capabilities for protecting, securing, and managing Salesforce data and metadata. And out of the 10 features that we've listed here for you today, we'd like to highlight 5 of them, which we've circled here, beginning with data archiving. So Veeam Data Cloud enables archiving data that is no longer needed in Salesforce, but must be retained for compliance or other reasons. Next is frequent scheduling. Users can create different backup schedules for various Salesforce objects to meet specific recovery point objectives, enabling high-frequency backups for critical objects. Encryption. So Veeam encrypts data on the client side using either built-in or AWS KMS keys, providing an extra layer of security, which we're going to take a look at. Data masking. Sensitive data can be masked when seeding sandboxes, ensuring data security and privacy during development and testing. And then finally, safe sandbox seeding. Veeam allows for the creation of production fresh sandbox, which are useful for development, testing, and training purposes. Okay, and with that, let's get right into this demonstration. So I'm going to try and switch out of this and back into our platform so we can have a look. So let me stop sharing for a second. And I'm going to, let's just do a quick refresh here. And let me see if I can share again. And this time, I'm going to try sharing this. Michael, if you're still there, you might.
Yeah, I'm still there. The text is a little bit fuzzy, however.
Is it still a little bit fuzzy? Okay, this time, hang on a second. Let me see if I can make the text a little bit bigger. How does that look?
That's readable. If you could go one bigger again.
Okay, let me do that. How's that?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, super. The challenges with multiple monitors. Okay, great. At least you can see it. Thank you for confirming, Michael. So this, what you're looking at, and you saw it earlier, Michael had it on his demo. This is our unified interface that provides access to the workloads that Veeam can protect today, which what we spoke about was Entra ID and Salesforce. Now, let me go to the next piece here, because what we want to get into is we want to get into Salesforce, and we want to, you can see here I have multiple tenants, and I've got a production and I've got a sandbox. And what I want to show you today is the production org. And so within this, I'm greeted with my dashboard, and this dashboard in Veeam Data Cloud provides a quick overview of your Salesforce backup health, displaying statuses for data file metadata backups, along with recent data changes and object modification trends, which we see towards the bottom. It also includes real-time notifications and alerts for important backup or archival events. Now, I haven't configured any in this environment, so that's why you don't see anything in the bottom right screen under notifications. However, I can set that up quite easily. Okay, next up, let's get right into these backup policies. We're going to take a look first at the backup policy, and then we'll move into the data archival policy. And I know we're going to be maybe a little pressed for time, so I'm going to try and get through this quickly. And by the way, folks, if we run out of time, because we are going to be very close to time, we'd be quite happy to schedule some separate sessions for maybe particular parts of product that we don't get to today, that we don't get to cover. So just keep that in mind, that we are happy to follow up with you. Okay, so once we've connected into our Salesforce tenant, we can start to create our policies. Now, to perform backups of Salesforce organizations and or archival of Salesforce records, the product runs policies. So a policy, think of it as a collection of settings that define the way backup and archival operations are performed. What data process, how to process it, and when to start processing, and so on. So the first backup policy is automatically configured when the Salesforce org is added to the Veeam Data Cloud. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to edit this policy so you can see I've got one in place. And what's great is, I think you saw this when we were looking at Entra ID, is we have little wizards that kind of help step you through the different pieces of what you need to do for each of the policies. So here we've made the connection. I can assign permissions. I've got my Salesforce API limits, which I can set below. I move through the wizard, and here I can set my schedules. Now, there's some default schedules in place, which is daily, but I can move to hourly and weekly. And I can also create a managed schedule, which is fine-tuned for my environment. And I could set that schedule for every hour, every day. I could set it for every 2 hours, 3 hours, etc. I can also adjust the time zone that I want to launch this backup policy in. And I could also set a window as well from a specific time period. Say if I wanted to kick my backup off at, say, 1 a.m. in the morning so that I'm not impacting business, I can do that as well. So I have a lot of flexibility in terms of how I want to schedule these backups. We spoke about encryption. We can encrypt different fields and files, which I would have the settings here for. And we've also got encryption keys. So you can use the built-in encryption keys, or you could use your own key from AWS, because as you know, Salesforce infrastructure, a lot of it is built on AWS. Finally, we have retention policy settings. So we can specify for how long historical versions can be retained, for how many years, and also if we need to purge older content as well. That brings me to a summary of what I've just configured, and then I click Finish, and that will obviously put this policy in place. Now I'm going to exit here, and we're going to quickly take a look at the archival policy. And this policy here, so you can configure data archival policies and instruct the product to delete or obsolete excessive data from Salesforce production orgs, mainly to consume less storage space in Salesforce because we know that it's very expensive, and to improve its performance. So those are two key reasons. And again, I come in here, I've got a very simple data archive policy in place, but you can see again with my wizard, I can give it a name. This is telling me what instance I'm connected to, what data that I want archived. In this case, I just did very simple objects of attachments. I can set my policy schedule, and this is very valuable here, this test mode. I can select this option, and this allows me to query Salesforce data without deleting it. And it helps me to verify which objects and how many records will actually be affected by the policy. Again, I can set some limits on the records. I can set the hierarchy depth. And lastly here, I can set the API limits. Verify all this, making sure that I have the right permission set. It'll give me a summary of what my policy is going to be. And then, of course, I could save that and put that in place. I don't want to save these particular changes. And this brings us to the next piece, which is the restore. So to recover backed up data, Veeam Data Cloud runs restore jobs, which you can see I've got some of them listed here. When you create a restore job, it is created as a draft, and then you can further edit or remove or start or clone that job. So you can see I've run 3 jobs in this environment, and I've got 2 drafts. And I just want to very quickly show you these drafts. And the first one here, because they're very unique use cases. So coming to my wizard, I've got a name. I could provide some information about that particular job. This one here, I'm restoring from production into sandbox, okay? And when I go to select what objects or what information that I want to restore, I can do that here. In this particular scenario, we've got accounts that I want to restore. And this one count called Acne is the one that I've highlighted. Now, this is where some data masking is really helpful. I've created a template for my sandboxes, because what I don't want to do is put my account revenue from my account objects into sandbox, where it could be exposed to people that don't necessarily need that information, or contractors or whoever's working in the sandbox. So here I've anonymized my account annual revenue, as you can see here, which is, I think, is a great use case. And there's many different use cases for what types of data. I just happened to create a mask for that, but there's lots of different fields that you could mask from going into sandbox. Again, I can select which attachments that I want to restore. And if I want to restore any attachments, I have my hierarchy. And here I can specify, as you know, within Salesforce, I can specify hierarchy levels. And if I show, if I get stuck along the way, this is great about Veeam, is where we have these little info boxes, and I can just click there if I need some additional instruction as to what that will perform. Again, different levels of hierarchy that I've chosen for this restore. I have my options around data consistency, which fields that I may want to override or to map over. And really important here is being able to turn off automations. So I could kick off this restore, and it could trigger a bunch of workflows, rules, triggers, etc. And if I don't want that, then I can select this option to automatically turn it all off. Lastly, it'll verify my perm set to make sure that I'm authorized to do this restore. Additionally, I could export this out to CSV. And then finally, it gives me a summary of my restore job, which is just here. Now, I want to exit this, and I know we're just about out of time. The last policy I'm going to show you very, very quickly is this one here, because it's a different use case. And here I'm restoring for production to production. Again, I'm looking at accounts, and this is what's really interesting here. So I'm looking at restoring this Acme account. When I look at the information from my last restore point to production data, and I scroll down here, all this information looks the same. I can use this little toggle to see, is there any differences? When I click on that, there isn't. So my restore point and my production date are exactly the same, so they're in sync. However, I know that there was some changes made before that restore date, which I was able to select and look at this. What we found is that the annual revenue has actually changed from this point in time to my production date. And this new production value is incorrect, and this should be the correct information, and that's what I want to restore back to. So I can select that. I can move through the wizard to complete all the information, and just for time's sake, because you've seen a lot of this already, I go to my summary and I click finish the job, and I start the job after I finish it, and that kicks off, and that will restore back to the original production point. So I think with that, I'd like to show you a lot more, but just with time constraints, we will wrap up. Let me come back into here. And just let me, actually, sorry, before I do that, I'll just close up here because there's some great information that is in here that has information about my Veeam accounts, subscriptions, any cases that I need to log, some additional resources around user guide. We have a forum, we've got product demos, knowledge base, a lot of great information in there for you. So I will come back into the demo and conclude by saying thank you very much for attending today. And in closing, just in terms of our value proposition, we have no unpredictable cloud cost, simple pricing model. We have fully customizable backup and scheduling, granular compare and restore, which you saw, sandbox seeding, which we talked about, data archiving, unlimited storage, and unified management with other SaaS apps. Is there any questions before we close? I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat window and see. It looks very quiet. If there aren't any questions for us, we will conclude the session today. I'll just give it a minute just in case anybody does want to pop us in a question, comment, feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in there. Okay, well, listen, let's leave it at that. You have our information, so you can get in touch with us. Thank you so much for attending today. It was a pleasure to be here, and look forward to further conversations with you down the road. Thank you very much.